I write them down so I don't commit suicide later, having forgotten the idea.
Then you want to blow your brains out. And the government's not showing the plane hitting when many cameras photographed it. At the World Trade Center.
Where you get these bitches?
After a successful career in the 2000s with hits like Too Fast, Too Furious.
What the hell? What the
What the What the
Oh, if you don't get it, then you just don't get David Lynch.
3, 2, 1. Here's the thing with that, champ. That's short for
Champions.
You just stay alert, do your work, don't worry about the world going by. It doesn't mean that you can sit around and not do anything. You've got to get your butt in gear and do it. And don't take no for an answer. Translate those ideas to cinema or to a painting or to whatever. And figure out a way to get it done.
Hello, everybody. This is Half of God's Face podcast once again with Austin and Zach. My name is Zach, and here is Austin, who told me over and over again that if we did a David Lynch podcast in honor of his death, he said, I'm going to walk off the podcast. I'm done with this whole show. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And here we are. I'm creating a conflict as our potentially our first episode of what will be the greatest podcast ever. The greatest podcast ever. I'm calling it. What do you got to say, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, the great things arise from conflict. I mean, any two people creating something, you know, like Klaus Kinski and Herzog, you know, there can be some friction there.
Yeah.
Although,
Yeah. No, they got down, and you know, in our era, you know, you can't slap a bitch around like you used to be able to. You know what I mean?
I do think that you've said some borderline libelous and slanderous things about me.
No, I think it's good to, you know, to treat actors better than because I'm just thinking to myself, I'm pretty sure Herzog like pulled a gun on Klaus Kinski and shit like that.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically, but I'm pretty sure he was like, I just had to threaten to kill him. It was the only way I could get, you know, whatever.
I had to look into his. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm good at a Herzog impression. I'm like fucking it up right now though. I was working with Klaus, and I told him, I said, I will slit your fucking throat if you don't juggle these monkeys on top of this structure that I have built using slave labor.
All right. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I just unmuted myself because I was I was trying not to laugh.
Well, you know, it's a good way to start. R.I.P. David Lynch. Herzog is still with us, thankfully.
Right.
But it's crazy how famous he is. I mean, I just saw so many people reacting to his death. I mean, it's been a couple of weeks, but I feel like people are still kind of destroyed. But I feel like a lot of our friends have definitely, you know, a lot of people are watching his films right now, which is cool. But
yeah, it's great. How have you responded to his passing recently?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I know he's like, you know, 78 years old or whatever. I mean, I thought, I don't know. I knew he had emphysema, but I was just like, damn, I didn't expect it. Was kind of like in denial and whatnot. But, you know, at the end of the day, it still is like a door opening for sure, as far as like people like getting into him and just seeing how many people like loved. I mean, he really was like I mean, I never really considered him like a mainstream like filmmaker for, you know, as long as I like followed him. But I guess I never really knew the Twin Peaks stuff until recent. I mean, super recently. I mean, I saw like all the Twin Peaks, you know, seasons, like I want to say like 2019 or something. So when I was pretty much the whole time I was at Columbia, I had only really thought of him as like a filmmaker, and everyone I knew was, you know, telling me to check out Twin Peaks, and that it makes even more sense that he's so famous, especially from the original show. You know, like that show was so famous. Like that was like the show
Yeah.
at a certain point.
I mean, I've had some
And
like friends that, I mean, I'm way more into film than I would say television. I would call these friends, I don't know, quote unquote normies, and they told me all the time, like, have you seen Twin Peaks? Have you seen Twin Peaks? And I was like,
yeah,
no, I haven't yet.
well, Sean was even saying, he was like, and this kind of makes sense because again, the aspects of Twin Peaks that I don't like is when it's like a melodrama, like TV show, and it definitely does lean into that at times. And then there are the insane Lynchian, like the absolute peak moments of the original show. Twin Peaks are just absolutely incredible, right? And pretty much the whole what I had been told, and this is kind of like what is what most people will say about it, is that the first season is incredible, and then I think they did season 2, and on season 2, I don't think Lynch directed a lot of the episodes. I think he might have just, I forget how many episodes there are, to be honest, but I remember it might be like 25 episodes or something, like, or like
I
30 episodes.
believe it
But
is 30.
yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's counting the return, because the return is 18
Right,
episodes.
right.
So basically it's like 12 or 13 episodes that it'd be so annoying if I'm like getting this wrong. That's why, yeah, I mean, we could always circle back and do, I feel like Twin Peaks is worthy of discussion, and it might actually just deserve its own like episode, to be honest, just because that would be so easy to get Matt to jump on, because he's just such a fanatical, you know. I mean, there's endless amounts of people we could easily have talked to through
Yeah,
this Lynch episode, but as far as like just him dying, it's like, you know, we can probably like mainly look at at his films rather than like Twin Peaks, and then yeah, like I
sure.
said, do a Twin Peaks episode later with more people to talk to, because again, Lynch, it's like he's not really. I'm not like, I love Lynch, but I'm not like, I have so many friends that are so diehard. They like know everything, and like every clip and every quote and every people listen to his music. You know, people watch everything he ever did, and I've seen all of his films, but yeah, basically Twin Peaks, the original show, kind of tapered off, is the vibe I got. It might have been like 10 or 12 episodes strong, where it was like, okay, this is clearly Lynch's vision. And then I think he started having other people direct at a certain point the episodes. And then he directed the finale of the original Twin Peaks show.
Yes.
And the finale is unbelievable. You know, and he basically keeps cutting back to the imagery of the finale in The Return, uh and then Fire Walk with Me. You haven't seen that, right?
I have. I watched it this morning at
You
6 a.
watched it without seeing Twin Peaks.
Yes. I saw it at 6 a.m. because I
And
woke
did you
up.
ask anybody if you should do that?
No, I didn't even freaking.
Because that's like a total spoiler. I mean, that's like who did it. Like,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I heard
that's
it
like,
was a prequel, and I was like, "Well, that's cool." And then I was like,
okay, so you did know it
"Oh,
was a prequel. No.
yeah,
No, we could. we could probably suck. I feel like, yeah, like Fire Walk with Me, Twin Peaks: The Return, and then Twin Peaks: The Original Show would be way too difficult to get into in this episode, just
sure,
because you haven't seen the show and all this stuff, and we could really go in on it. Like, let's say 6 months. I'm not like, I don't know how ready I am to jump into the original Twin Peaks again, just
yeah,
because. I mean, I just watched The Return again, and it's just unbelievable. I mean, it's here's what I would say, and you know, people will consider The Return like a film. It's very you have a very strong argument if you say that Twin Peaks: The Return is the best thing that David Lynch ever did. You have a very, 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 very strong argument. Taylor Hentrup said that to me, and I was like, yeah. And Nabil thinks that, and Will brought that up, and I
Damn.
think Matt said that, and Ted Harden, our old professor,
Oh my
he
gosh.
said that when it was coming out, that and it is crazy. I mean, it is so good that you're like, it's like shocking how good it is. But yeah, I mean, I think Fire Walk with Me is like one of his best films. Also, I mean, it really Fire Walk with Me and then Wild at Heart. I mean, those might as well be Zukowski movies with like the screaming. I mean, her
Yeah,
screaming at
I
the
was
top of her
that's
lungs.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was thinking about that. How just the way that they are all acting, especially when we can get into the sound design of Fire Walk with Me too, but like
Yeah.
it's so um I don't know, it seems like they are capturing some sort of theatrical performances inside film. You know how as
Right.
in like, theater is like huge and big and emotive and film is more, but yeah, I was pretty into it.
Oh my god. No, it's insane.
Well,
The one guy
sorry.
like, how do you know what she likes?
Yeah, you showed me. I think you showed me a clip of the scene with the Laura Palmer and her dad when
Oh,
they're
I
at like
showed
a
you that.
red light
Yeah, I
and
love that
everyone's
so much.
screaming and that guy's yeah. You showed me that and I was like that yeah, I don't know about that. And then I've
when
come
she's
around
saying
to it.
when she's saying goodbye to one of her boyfriends, she's like, "I love you, Bobby."
Oh, I think yeah, when he's on the
She just screams
motorcycle,
in
I
his
think
she just screams in his face.
yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about Fire Walk with Me a lot because it's so fresh in my mind. But
How many
there's
did you watch a shit ton of movies today?
yeah. So I basically did Fire Walk with Me from like 6 to 8 a.m. and then I went to bed for a little bit, and then I got back up, and then I did Inland Empire,
Oh yeah, I just rewatched that one too
and
the other day.
then to your recommendation, I figured it would be good, like you said, to rewatch Mulholland Drive before this.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, because I don't know. I did feel that with The Return. I mean, I just rewatched The Return. But man, I had a screening at. Funny enough, do you remember? No, it's James. I love you,
Yeah, James
James.
was the the guy on the yeah, it's James.
The other one is Bobby. So, I mean, I get it. I think you can really. I mean, The Return just does everything. Like it does everything. The range is unbelievable. It's so epic. But I had a script. So you remember how Nico like hates watching movies or whatever, and he like I don't know if you remember this, but he like brings it up all the time, even though I've like really never tried to make him watch anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
It's
he
a
brings it up all the
very
time.
bizarre stance.
Yeah, it's a very extreme stance because it's like one of my good friends, and for years I was kind of just like, man, I don't think he has any idea that I 100% could get him to like certain movies, right? And I succeeded. We watched JFK, Nixon, and W at Nico's place. Me, Eamon, and Nico just like you know hanging out, and that went so great. And Lynch died, and I think Nico through osmosis appreciates David Lynch, which is kind of I didn't expect that. I think probably because he's just heard so much about him, like from friends and stuff, and I think he's seen like clips of him as because similar to Herzog, Lynch as a personality and as a human being is so larger than life that it's easy for people just to like him just from hearing things he says or seeing clips of him. And so the point I'm making is we all got together and watched Mulholland Drive at Nico's place. me, Aim, and Nico, and our friend Zach Fedor, who's like in this really cool band, and it was a really special screening because I had actually just rewatched Mulholland Drive like 3 or 4 months ago, like just because, and it held up. It was incredible, but the screening at Nico's place was like, wow, this movie really gets you, you know. And Nico was blown away. It was really cool to see, and we in our group chat we keep writing Urando in all caps, 2 L's, ORANDO.
Is that the when she's singing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Urando.
yeah. Yeah. Watching Mulholland Drive again was it's a treat, especially when I don't know. Obviously, I think people should like see cinema on the biggest screen possible, but Mulholland Drive, if you're like just at your apartment and the lights are off and you're just eating Chinese food. I'm describing myself obviously, but it's just yeah, I really don't try to I guess try to like look up like what did this mean and that mean? Like I'm about all the Lynch films anymore, and
Right. Well, I was mainly bringing it up just because, yeah, I mean the Urando scene of the Club Silencio. I mean that has to be like, I mean that's damn near one of like top 10, top 15 like greatest scenes.
that's what you
Like,
said, and I think that the most interesting part of that scene is how he tells you that it's just a recording.
yeah.
And then she frickin' I don't know, she dies or passes out and the music is still going on.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really, I mean, our good friend Matt Fagerholm, a great critic from Chicago, he sent me an interview he did with Rebecca Del Rio, the woman who sang that song.
Right, right.
And it was crazy seeing the, you know, seeing like how that scene came together is just really interesting because it was lip song. I mean, well, I think she was singing, like, but like I think they might have cut out her audio on location, and then they used like a recording that they had gotten. Like the first time she like auditioned was like the recording you hear in the movie. I'm pretty sure.
Um yeah, I think like I was trying to look it up. I think it's like a different language of Roy Orbison's crying. I could be
Yeah, it's
wrong
something
on
like
that.
that.
Yeah. And I know that like Lynch originally wanted to use crying in his I think it was back when he
You
was
said
making
Barbara Orbison.
no, Roy Orbison. So like you know like the In Dreams song in Blue Velvet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The more popular one of his hits is Crying. And I guess Crying it's like a cover of the song Crying. That's what I read.
Yeah, I'm
That
pretty
that
sure
song
that's
is
what
in
it is.
the
Yeah, he recorded it with her, and they like did a take on this microphone, and David Lynch says to her, "Ding dang, Rebecca Del Rio, that was aces."
Rebecca Del Rio. That was I can hear that's great impression. Yeah. That just seems so oh, that's wonderful. That seems so accurate with like
That was
how he would
aces.
have reacted to it.
I've never heard anyone say that.
That was aces. I say aces, but I don't say that was aces. Yeah.
Yeah, R.I.P. But yeah, I think he honestly, I don't know. I mean, it's like an emotional thing for sure. But I feel like the heights of Mulholland Drive, and the other argument I can make for why Mulholland Drive has aged so well. There's this filmmaker, the South Korean filmmaker Hong Sang-soo, who I'm obsessed with, and a couple of my friends are obsessed with, and he's pumping out like 2 movies a year, 3 movies a year recently, and he does this thing where he will have the same characters play 2 or 3 different roles in the same
Oh
movie.
yeah, that's a good thing to bring up.
And in that context, I mean, he's not like a surreal filmmaker. He's like he's hyper realistic to the degree where it's almost mundane. Like he could get clumped in with like slow cinema people for sure. But he's very content. He'll make like a movie that's like very content with having not very much happen, and it'll just be people talking. But the Mulholland Drive, the way that the women like flip around in the second half of the movie, which is, obviously if a person hasn't seen Mulholland Drive yet, I mean, too bad, Jesus. Everyone's seen this movie. But yeah, I feel like it almost reminds me of Hong Sang-soo, where I'm like, wow, Lynch is doing something. And, Hong Sang-soo did that same format like in the late 90s. I mean, it wasn't like, I mean, I'm not sure David Lynch would have seen Hong Sang-soo. I mean, it's definitely a different thing the way Lynch does it, and Lynch does it with Lost Highway too, with Patricia Arquette
Oh yeah.
being being a couple different characters at the same time. But no, there's something about the way that Hong Sang-soo does it where it's almost like this comment on friend groups a lot of the time, and it'll be like, if there's like a group of 4 or 5 friends in a Hong Sang-soo film, you'll see every character be in like a relationship with every other character, but then the implication is that there's no connective tissue, like as in these are just alternate realities for these characters, rather than this is all these people like sleeping around. But when you watch his movies, that ends up becoming kind of the comment, though, is that people live so many lives. Like an individual lives so many lives. And in the case of like, a friend group or something, there can be so many different iterations of everybody dating each other, which I think he's kind of working with, Hong Sang-soo. And I don't know, to me, that's one of the things that's aged so well about Mulholland Drive is that technique of having characters completely play different characters. I mean, this could almost connect into talking about like Kinds of Kindness or something. Like
Oh yeah.
vignettes almost. And I don't know, Lynch very much does that throughout his career. Even in his movies that are more straightforward, he'll just have like the most batshit insane characters walk into the movie for like 2 seconds and then walk out. So he kind of already is like in that realm of like vignette, but I don't know, the connective tissue between Inland Empire and Mulholland Drive that's interesting is that both were kind of unconventional productions from what I've heard. And yeah, I mean, Mulholland Drive was going to be like a TV show. So
Oh
they had,
yeah, I forgot about that.
yeah, so they like shot it. They had like a full pilot. I'm pretty sure they had like an hour-long pilot or something,
Oh
or like
yeah, that's I
an
saw that
hour
on
and a half of
IMDb,
material, maybe.
and I was like, "What the hell is this?" Because I was looking at all the actors and like what they have done, and when I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like I don't know if anyone can see what the pilot would have looked like. I personally don't know what scenes were the pilot and what weren't. Um, I'm sure someone might be able to tell me, but he basically took that and then he kind of incorporated it in. And so the movie, it definitely, it's without a doubt, the movie has this disjointedness to it. And then Inland Empire did that too, because with Inland Empire, he said he had like 4 or 5 different ideas that were thinly related, and then he had an idea that connected them all together. And he just was filming stuff with like a shitty digital camera in like 2004 or something, 2005, when he was making Inland Empire. And then that movie is super super disjointed. But I was saying this to Sean, going back to his legacy, it is interesting to me that Twin Peaks is so larger than life, and David Lynch is so larger than life. When we're like in college, I always thought of David Lynch as the guy who made Inland Empire. Is kind of what I realized when I was going through all of his films was, wow, for most of my life, I just always thought of him as like this guy who makes a movie that's like completely inaccessible. And that's great. I mean, I just rewatched Eraserhead just now, and it's a similar kind of thing, but Eraserhead is like, it's kind of, clearly a first film.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's
No,
still,
you are right.
it's still wild, but it's not, he's not like, and I could accept all arguments for what films people love with Lynch, but yeah, I don't know. I personally think I kind of think Mulholland Drive is one for me,
Uh-huh.
and then The Return is probably two, and then I really think Fire Walk with Me is just unbelievable. But I don't know. Wild at Heart is also, I just saw that for the first time, and it's incredible. It's another movie that just feels like a Zukowski movie.
I am a little bit depressed on that because I it's been hard to try to get that copy.
Right.
But
Yeah, I got lucky just because Matt, I like texted around and Matt had a DVD of it, so we got together and watched it. But yeah, I don't know. I appreciate the disjointedness. I mean, obviously you got to talk about like Dreams, talking about David Lynch, but yeah, I think the disjointedness was, when it comes to like making a pilot and then you start making a movie, it just fits his style so well. Like it's I don't know, Mulholland Drive is like one of the it's one of the it's considered one of the greatest movies ever made, but like yeah, just that the Rebecca Del Rio scene, like, to me really is like, I think that scene is pretty much the best. That's like the height of David Lynch, even though uh episode 8 of The Return is notorious at this point. I don't know if you heard about this.
I have not. Yeah, I have not.
Basically, it's this episode where the plot just completely departs and it just becomes insanely experimental. There's like lights and colors and shit. And one of the craziest conventions about The Return that made the show so fun to watch, like the 2017 version of Twin Peaks, is he has this bar and he starts bringing in bands. So at the end of every episode, there's like a different band like playing a song,
Whoa.
and it's like live music. It's like a live music event with an audience, and they're like, you know. So in fucking episode 8, the guy comes out on stage who like runs this like venue, and he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, the 9-inch Nails."
No.
And 9-inch Nails comes out,
Just comes and does their thing and kills
and
it.
it's just an insane set with like crazy lighting, and he's like demonically laughing, and it's like completely insane. Where you're like, wow, I had no idea that David Lynch was going to bring out like a super famous band. Like, and then it cuts from that to like the first ever nuclear bomb test in New Mexico in the desert in the 40s.
What?
Yeah, it's completely, I mean, it's like one of those things when you see it, you're like, wow, I honestly cannot believe that he went this far with this episode. And there's like crazy imagery, and the big, there's this huge tall guy, this giant that I think Cooper was like having, I want to say he was having dreams of him in the original show or something, but Cooper is really interesting, the Kyle MacLachlan character, because he's kind of like this very like headstrong but also kind of innocent FBI guy. But what's so funny is that he like always knows what to do, even if he's confronted with like a completely Lynchian, unexplainable situation. And I'm not even going to spoil it, but it's very unexpected the way he brings Cooper in to The Return. But basically, there's two. It's again connected back to what we're saying. There's two Coopers in The Return.
You know what would be even better is if like I do Fire Walk with Me, then do The Return, and then just don't even watch the first 2 seasons.
I I was I was really thinking about that when I rewatched The Return, because he brings a lot of people back from the original show, and you have so many moments that you're like, wow, this hits so hard. But after, rewatching it without having seen the original, uh without having rewatched the original Twin Peaks in a while, um yeah, I definitely did forget like certain bits and pieces. Like they would bring in certain characters and I would be like, oh yeah, I kind of remember who this is, but I kind of forget. But it doesn't really matter necessarily. But some stuff just goes like so full circle. I think if you saw it, you would definitely have moments where you're like, I think you could recognize that, like, there are pretty big reveals as far as like, oh wow, they got that person back. That person is here, and there's a lot of characters. It's so funny in Fire Walk with Me. One of the guys that she's like talking with, I forget his name, but it's this character that like doesn't even come into the original show for like a while, and you like hardly even know that he knew like Laura like the whole show, and then here he is in Fire Walk with Me, and you're like, oh my god. Fire Walk with Me is just crazy because it's like he's just literally telling you what happened. And all of Twin Peaks is like, who killed Laura Palmer? That's the whole show. It's like, who did it?
Yeah.
But anyway, not to get bogged down in incomplete conversation about Twin Peaks, but I don't know if you wanted to say more on Mulholland Drive or talk about other films as.
I mean, we were talking about the theater scene, and I don't know. This is kind of a side note, but it ties into it. There's always where I work, we do karaoke every other Friday, and there's this girl that always comes in. Her first song is like very bombastic and uh, loud and beautiful, and like there will be people that are sitting down and just being like very moved and crying sometimes, right?
Oh my god.
And I'm just sitting there like I'm wondering about the editing in that scene because obviously we know that well, I guess Naomi Watts and I forget the other actress's name are in the theater, but like I feel very moved without cutting to them.
Yeah.
And there's something else about like seeing people crying doing like the same thing you're doing, because like if you're not freaking moved by that scene, it's kind of like a testament if you really like that movie or not. You know what I mean? If you're sitting there like, oh, jeez, I did like, okay, what? No, it's the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful things in film I've seen, and I don't know. I'm just kind of glad that there's that cut to the two women, and they're moved just as much as I am.
Yeah. Naomi
Yeah.
Watts is like having a seizure at one point.
Yeah, I mean, she
It's
does
so
do that,
funny,
but
bro.
but before she was she was pretty, she was pretty into it.
I don't know who I am.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Naomi, what did I tell you? No,
I
it's gonna be way too easy to do. I gotta be honest, when me and Eamon were watching Inland Empire the other day at my place, uh that movie is I love Inland Empire. I think it's like incredible. It's one of the furthest examples of his style, but it definitely is one of those movies where you can like really get obliterated by it. Like this, once you get like an hour and a half, 2 hours in, it's like, what the fuck is even going on right now?
it was yeah, I saw that today. That
Was that the first time you've seen it?
um and honestly, and what I mean like I've seen it before in like bits and pieces.
Yeah.
I think we showed it at Film Club.
Yeah, that was not the best screening just because the projector was like 40% dim.
Yeah, and I think that like you know, bleep the word, but yeah, I was kind of a cunt. I think I fell asleep. So this was more of
Yeah.
like a
We're not bleeping it, but go on.
okay, well, I have to call some people. No, yeah, no, Inland Empire just freaking that freaking oh my god. That's a film that like you have to I feel like why a lot of people don't like it is because like they're not understanding who David Lynch is, and they're just like watching a movie like, oh, I heard this acclaimed director, you know, etc. 3-hour movie, and then you as soon as it starts, it's like it's just like a low quality like camera,
Yeah.
and you're
And it's
like,
very dark, like very it's just like very like dimly lit the whole time.
yeah,
A lot of like shadows and stuff.
there's so many things that like I guess like you can say like there's so many entry points in that film that you can just start to hate if like you're expecting like a film, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because when I was rewatching it, I was like, I said to Eamon, I was like, yeah, they just stopped following any kind of plot like 45 minutes in, and I was a little bit off. It was like an hour, like 10, I think, like an hour 10 minutes in, when it was just like, all right, we're outside of, we're away from the cursed film now. We're so far away from that. But I was just doing, we were doing a lot of David Lynch impressions while watching it. Because I was just like, because there's so many like quiet moments and that like as it goes on, you know.
There's a
Um,
catalog.
wait, is that a quote for the movie or?
No. I'm just interjecting. Anyway, you were saying, I'm sorry.
No, well, I had this idea where I'm like, damn, what if Lynch was just like a really passionate like Zionist, and but he was like a fundamentalist Christian Zionist, so he like wanted the rapture to happen. So he was like, I just got off the phone with Donald J. Trump. I told him, you must destroy the Al Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, and upon that stone shall be built the third temple, and Jesus will return. So I was doing that a lot. A lot of those kind of things, a lot of David Lynch voices on set, like just completely again, David Lynch did not say any of this. This is me just like, you know, goofing around. Uh Imagine him on set being like, and we all know what I think about the Zionist entity. And just like like telling the cast and crew, and then the cast and crew are looking at him like, David, please
Please,
stop.
sis,
Please stop talking
you've
about
said too
this.
much. Please.
So yeah, I don't know. It's too easy with his voice for sure. There's a lot of bits, and you know, you kind of saw him in Firewalk with Me. Do you know what his character is in Twin Peaks?
Gordon Cole. Yeah, I understand that like his hearing is completely jacked, and I love it.
It's so funny. Because there's a lot of that in the original show where he like comes in and it's like really funny. He's always shouting, just always shouting, and people are like, please stop shouting.
No, I love that like they have the actors in the scene like being as like what the you know, as the audience is. Like this guy just he's at a
He's
diner like,
constantly
why are you screaming? This is insane.
And he's constantly having to take phone calls too. So he's constantly calling someone and being like, "Hey!" The person on the other end is
What?
like, "Jesus
Can you
Christ!"
Yeah.
So he's in The Return too, and he's so funny. It's so funny. Like at one point they're driving through South Dakota or something, and I think it's like South Dakota or wherever Mount Rushmore is, and he's like, Albert, we're nowhere near Mount Rushmore. And Albert's like, here, I brought you a picture. And he gives him like a printed out picture of Mount Rushmore. And David Lynch takes it as Cole, Lieutenant Cole or whatever. And he goes, there they are, Albert. Faces of stone.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, you know, RIP. RIP RIP David Lynch. Blah blah blah.
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, it just freaking like kicked me in the freaking balls. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Well, like I
like,
said, it was
yeah,
cool to see. It was cool to see everybody like reacting to it for sure. But yeah, it definitely was like it was like wow, that's you know yeah. I
yeah,
mean, there's been different times in my life where I've obviously always loved like his films, but
yeah,
he's so hyped up that you're kind of like, okay, is he really that good? And yeah, I mean, I think he is one of the greatest of all time for sure. I mean, however you want to quantify that, I don't know if I would personally call him the greatest director ever, but if someone said that, I appreciate it. I mean, it's far away from the kind of style that I would work in film and even in
yeah,
literature. Like I'm not necessarily like I mean there are definitely some dream sequences in my the novel I've been working on for the last 5 years, but they're definitely not Lynchian, you know. They're totally different
yeah.
like but yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I think he's the ultimate example of a filmmaker that when people copy his style, they just do the worst job possible. And there are so many bad examples of like his influence, but it's obvious from you know
Yeah.
his from Eraserhead on. I mean, he really just had like his whole style like just locked in for the
Well,
most part.
I think when David Lynch died, it's not just like we lost a person. I mean, obviously we did, but I think of it just like cinema. It's kind of cliche, like cinema lost it, but like there's something about like David Lynch where you hear him talk and you just feel like you know him.
Right.
And I mean, like you know, like you said before, if people are
The
trying
Al-Aqsa
to
Mosque shall be destroyed. Sorry, he
I
didn't
mean,
say that.
if people are trying to like imitate him and they're making like obviously there's been bad examples, but you know when people if people are trying to imitate a great director, I don't think that's a bad thing. And I mean, it's weird with death. Like fortunately, like I people have been paying attention to his filmography probably more than ever before now.
Right.
And there's probably been so many people that have watched Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, Eraserhead, and he's just telling people outright if you listen to him in interviews or just the videos that he made personally, just create something. You know, like oh my god, that was such a
Right.
bad impression. But just you know,
It's okay. I am unnaturally good at doing voices for no reason. I don't know why.
I can't beat you. I can't beat you.
Uh, yeah, it's not a competition, but fucking Dave, David Lynch. You're definitely so right as far as he very much was like very outspoken about creativity, and obviously one of the most inspiring things. And I had already I don't know when I first started watching interviews with him, but I'd already internalized this on my own. So I when I saw him and I heard about him doing this, I was like, wow, this guy is awesome. Is the fact that he just refuses to explain what any of his movies are about. And he like cuts people off like he cuts people at the knees. Like they're not even close to getting an answer on stuff. Like you remember what the famous story from Eraserhead was? Like the most insane like iconic thing that happened?
No.
So I'm pretty sure Stanley Kubrick was obsessed with Eraserhead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was his like most famous film. Or sorry, it was Stanley Kubrick's favorite film.
Yeah, at a certain point, yeah. Like when he was gearing up for The Shining, he like was like loving Eraserhead, you know? And he called David Lynch to ask him how he like made the baby, like the freakish like miscarriage baby. And
Yeah.
David Lynch told him nothing. He like wouldn't tell him. He wouldn't tell Stanley Kubrick. This is Stanley Kubrick at the height of his fame, calling an unknown David Lynch, and David Lynch is like completely refusing to tell him, like on a production design level, how they made it, how they physically like. That's such a crazy thing to like hold secret. Like, why? Like, are you telling me that was a living entity that you killed on screen? Or are you like, and there's a sense of guilt where you're like, I don't want to admit to people that that's like my, you know, that's some deformed monster that we found in the woods or something. I don't even fucking, I mean, why would he tell Stanley Kubrick? It's like, who cares? But I don't know. I just think that's really funny, but I really appreciate it. Not even with the technical stuff, just with all of his films. Like, if anybody asked him what anything was about, he's just like, he will not give an answer. He won't even give close to an answer.
No, that's a good point. I've seen like a lot of interviews with him where they're like, "Can you elaborate on it?" And he goes, "No," and everyone laughs, and he's like, "Haha, yeah." Like they're just in the presence of this guy that like you're not going to crack. You're not going to like get.
Yeah.
You can analyze the film, and you can have YouTube videos that get millions of views explaining, what is the Lost Highway? This is the girl, etc. in Mulholland Drive, and it really it's still like he's still
Oh,
coming out on
Jesus.
top of that.
Yeah, it's funny to start a podcast when I just watch zero like of those like film analysis videos just because like
Well, maybe that's something I can help. I watched the plebs. Oh God, please delete that.
delete that.
Delete
No,
I said I watched the plebs. That is.
Oh Jesus, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna stop myself from
I'm
saying
being funny.
the first thing. The first thing I was about to say, I'm like, damn, I should say this, but I'm gonna take a second here.
Delete
It's
the
like,
plebs. Delete the plebs.
oh my
Delete
god,
the.
we got to just delete this episode. Jesus Christ.
I don't
So
think
anyway,
so.
as I was saying about the Alex, so let's get into politics. No, JK. No, what I was saying just about Lynch is just like, yeah, I mean, again, I appreciate it. He was kind of saying that, and this is my view as well. I mean, because he takes it as being rude, and that's how I take it too. To be honest, I mean, if I make a piece of art, if I like write a poem, or if I make a film, or if I'm working on like a novel, and someone experiences it, like if someone watches my movie, and then the first conversation they have with me, if the first thing they say to me is, "What was that about?" It's like the ultimate like it's the ultimate like slap in the face. And I'm not trying to like make it like a personal thing because obviously I get it. People like want to know. People they want to believe that art is this thing that's like a sentence, that you just have a sentence for, like, I don't know, Eraserhead was 5 years of David Lynch's life, and he's just like on a shitty soundstage, like working at, at AFI or something, and he probably is like super broke, like, I'm sure he like was just barely getting by, and then he makes this movie that's like like a complete dream, and there's no like logic to it, and it's surreal and like moving, and there's these hypnotic moments, and just a really crazy ending, and Eraserhead, and the guy's fucking head gets made into a pencil at one point. That's a simplification, but blah, blah, blah. And then you get out of that, and then you're going to have some person who looks at David Lynch and they go, "What was that about?" It's like, that's insulting. Like, that's almost that's how I take it. It's like, do you really think the point of making Eraserhead is for David Lynch to go around the country for the next 30 years and say, yes, I made Eraserhead for this reason. It's like, no. It's like, it like goes without saying. Like, if a movie is like super divisive or a movie is like super abstract, like there's kind of a reason why, you know? I mean, if you write an essay, it's like even more obvious. Like, if I wrote an essay and the title of the essay was like, what's wrong with the economy? And then you read it and then you say to me, you read my essay and you're just like, wait, Zach, but what is wrong with the economy? It's like, guys, that's what I just did. You know, it's like the weirdest. It's like the ultimate. Like, okay, but outside of the fact that you made something, and then that has dimensions that are experienced by people, and people can you know, film is an interpretive medium, especially with music and sound and emotion. Like a lot of this stuff is abstract. To just ask for a sentence to explain that is like it's like, really? You're really gonna ask David Lynch? You're really gonna ask him what Inland Empire is about? He apparently famously said that. So you know, the I don't even know how to explain what Inland Empire is about, but the plot was apparently what he had said the plot was a woman in trouble. That was what he had said forever. That was like the tagline or some shit. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's like a similar kind of thing. It's like if I finish a film and I'm trying to like, if I have to like put like a summary of what the film I just made is, it's always so annoying. I mean, the most recent movie I made, it was easier to explain what it is. But I mean, there are so many films I've made where it's like, I don't know. I mean, I have to describe what happened. I'm not going to just say like, because yeah, I mean, a lot of this is like this, especially a lot of this is talking about the unconscious. So it's kind of like, how are you supposed to simplify something that's so mysterious and so universal? Um, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm honestly shocked how many people ask David Lynch to his face what his movies are about. It's every interview. They like try to ask him, and he's always like, "Shut your mouth." Like they always try to ask him. They're always like, "But can you tell me?" So yeah, R.I.P. Um, I don't know if you have anything else to add to to whatever the fuck I just said.
No, sorry, I was lost in it. Gassing you up. I don't have much to add to it, but I do think like the pre
Have we not
20.
talked about any of the films? Like, what about Blue Velvet?
Oh my god. Well, I mean,
Is that your favorite?
is Blue Velvet my favorite? You know, it changes, but
Yeah,
I am in love with that fucking movie. Oh my god.
yeah.
I love everything about it. I don't care that there is kind of like a more accessibility like quality to it. I think like anybody that has seen David Lynch's films can understand that like Blue Velvet is still quote unquote Lynchian, but has more of a avenue to a normal audience, I would say. But
Right.
just the gosh, just the Dennis Hopper with the gas that he's inhaling and the music and the frickin' dude standing like when it's the climax of the movie and there's just a dead guy with a headshot, but he's still standing for some reason. Just there's in the closet, and I guess it's you see a lot of early themes that he has, like, you know, like lights burning out.
Yeah. Well, just the image of the
Card,
ear,
yeah,
it's like the ultimate.
that
The
too.
ear is like the the way I would almost put it is to make a film, to make a work of art. It's not as simple as like there's a starting point because, like I'm saying with Lynch, the disjointedness is kind of like a bunch of stuff pulled together that he doesn't even necessarily think is like connected together. Like it's images, it's sound, right? The sound of wind in David Lynch. But for me, that ear, this dismembered ear, like on a lawn, and I forget if Lynch said this specifically. He might have actually said this, like word for word, but I'm pretty sure that was like the first image with that film. Um, which kind of goes without saying because it happened so early in the movie, but it's so iconic also. Like it's kind of like what the movie is known for in a way. Like there's a lot of things that come up with Blue Velvet that are known. I mean, like you just said with Dennis Hopper, I mean, that's one of the greatest performances, like one of the craziest performances in film history.
Shut your fucking mouth! I'll send you straight to hell, fucker. Or oh my gosh, okay, I have to say this. There is a Green Day song.
Oh yeah, you were saying that. Yeah.
Comment. Yeah. There's a Green Day song. It's a cover of "My Generation" by The Who. And they have like a bass interjection, like the bass solo, drum solo, guitar solo, and then the final one is just Dennis Hopper screaming, "Heineken, fuck that shit." and I was always like, what is that? And then obviously, yeah, I saw Blue Velvet, and then
It's so funny because like that whole bit is set up in such
you
a
were
funny
talking about
way.
earlier with like people that have like we had an idea of like how many people knew about David Lynch, but it seems after his death even more popular. But I freaking in my teenage years was hearing like a quote from a David Lynch film in like a Green Day song. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's larger
The
than
Pabst Blue.
we've
Well,
realized.
I think it's just because he's so funny. It's like all like even at his most insane, his movies are so funny.
Well, you know, the one of the scenes in Eraserhead when they're making like erasers out of his head, obviously,
Right.
and there's been like no sort of glimpse of any sort of comedic element in the entire film. And then he just walks up to the guy when he's like ringing the thing, and he's like, "Enough, Paul."
Yeah. Well,
That's
that
it.
was the moment that was like way over the top funny. Yeah, because I thought like the mom like and like the family was really funny too. When the chick is just like crying, being like, I had like a half dead monstrosity baby, and she's like crying. You're like, Jesus Christ. But no, I mean the Pabst Blue Ribbon like line is so hilarious, and like everybody knows it. And my mom had I forget why she like my mom wouldn't even be someone that would watch like David Lynch, but she had always told me that Blue Velvet was like amazing, you know. So even she like had a strong response to it, and she had told me that everybody she knew was watching Twin Peaks when it came out in the 90s. And yeah, I love the setup. I love the setup of the like that the Pabst Blue Ribbon line that Dennis Hopper like shouts. It's yeah, out of context it's funny, but it's even funnier in the film because and this definitely segues in. This is a great connective argument between Eraserhead, Twin Peaks: The Return, um, Blue Velvet, even Mulholland Drive. When you're seeing like them shooting like the movie on Mulholland Drive, where you see like the old '50s kind of style, David Lynch has a fixation with the '50s. And the reason for that is I think he was born like in the 50s. I forget like what year. So he was like 78. So
1946.
yeah. So he has a specific, so for him, this is my interpretation. For David Lynch, any moment that he is dealing with the idealism of America in the 50s, or it's a disturbing dream sequence that is 50s coded and it's the cars. I have heard him say that in an interview, saying that there are beautiful cars and the idealism, like he really, there's something about it for him where he's like, again, that's obviously not what he's saying, is that the 1950s were were perfect. I mean, that's the
Sure,
entire
sure.
psychological basis for his body of work, is that there's something dark underneath the surface of suburban reality. And it's the ear. It's a green lawn. It's a white picket fences. It's people creepily waving to each other, and then it's this innocent guy finding a dismembered ear on the ground, and then kind of getting himself involved in this very innocent way, and like sex trafficking, I guess. like, I mean, like it is some insane plot, and I feel like for Lynch, the 50s works in those two different ways. Like it works as a starting thing of cuz it's not nostalgia. It's not him saying, here is a movie set, I don't even know if I would say Blue Velvet was, I mean, I don't know if it would be set in the 50s, but it's like 50s coded is like almost how I describe it. A lot of his films, right? Wild at Heart is kind of like that. Nick Cage sings like Elvis at one point, like an Elvis song type like performance, and it's like a 50s 60s kind of so he has this fixation on the Americana of the 50s and 60s, like this kind of drive-in movie theater vibe, and then he wants to go so much further. And like I'm saying, I think the impetus or the inspiration for that is the fact that it was when he was a boy, was the 50s. And I think he as a boy was genuinely like, wow, life is good. Like I think he genuinely had a positive outlook, like being like kind of like a small town guy. I think he was that's kind of how I interpret it, is almost like this path from innocence to adulthood. And again, that's in a lot of his films. But the Kyle MacLachlan character in Blue Velvet is definitely a perfect example of that. And him and Laura Dern is kind of like, again, it's just very innocent. Like there's this innocence about their performances, and there's this innocence with Mulholland Drive with some of the performances and stuff. And yeah, you can almost call it like theatrical, but at times like it's stylized. It's like he's trying to have performances that are not realistic. But that doesn't, I don't know if that necessarily means that they're, because when we were watching Mulholland Drive, you can kind of tell sometimes people are like, okay, Naomi Watts is really hamming it up right now. But obviously it's an amazing performance, and that's like what he's trying to get. But I think there's something about heightening that which allows him to just knock it down, which is an interesting conversation with like The Straight Story, which I had never seen, and I liked it. I mean, I thought it was well made. I could see myself seeing it on film and liking it
Oh
more.
yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
I'm sure the easiest criticism in the world to make about The Straight Story is that it's like half of a David Lynch film. And I'm not even going to try to like say that in all seriousness, because if someone said to me straight face like they just absolutely love the movie, I could see that. And I thought it was a little bit long for like what it was. I mean, it's not his script either. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a very, very simple film, but that movie is also very like, it's very much like about like America in that way, like about like but it's more like rural, you know. But it still has this kind of like innocence to it. Like a lot of his characters are unlike Agent Cooper. Actually, most of his characters are just so far away from understanding their own dilemma that it's interesting the way he kind of contrasts them all together. But yeah, I don't know. I thought the straight story was okay. I thought it was. I was watching it and I was like, this is great. And then at a certain point, I was like, okay, this is maybe a little long for what this is.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no disrespect. And I don't know. You've seen Dune?
Are you talking about David Lynch's Dune?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, this is gonna be a soundbite, and we're gonna get comments. David Lynch's Dune is better than Denis Villeneuve's Part 1 and Part 2.
Oh shit.
Because those movies aren't good, and I hate them.
Nice.
And I don't care if David Lynch was like, I God damn it. I disown this movie.
Austin, I'm getting a call from Donald J. Trump right now. Hello, David. How's it going?
David, I meant to say to you that your films. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you're dead. I'm sorry you're dead. Blue Velvet could have been. There could have been some more pussy in there, but that's okay.
Jesus. I was watching Blue Velvet. Yes, I was, and I thought, wow, this movie is really about existentialism. I think it's a little bit existential. I said to myself.
And the fact that Laura Dern isn't 30 yet, that's great. And we like the fact that Laura Dern isn't 30 yet, because that's when, frankly, that's when they get too old. But
she has
that's
beautiful
okay.
blonde hair. I love blonde hair.
Isabella Rossellini's ass is.
Oh my god.
But
no, it's like we're saying with Blue Velvet, like it is wild how dark it gets. Like, I mean, like, and then, like, he's just seeing this woman who's like, she can only like, she needs to get beat up.
No, it's insane.
So
It's
crazy
insane.
for her.
There's a sex scene, and it's probably, which is, you know, to each their own, but the most sexy scene in the film. And she's like, hit me. Hit me. And you're like, ugh. You're watching and you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
And he does hit her, but I have an image of Laura Dern's house in Blue Velvet, and it's paused, and she's getting a naked Isabel Rossellini out of the car.
Oh yeah.
Well, I've been keeping up on. I've just been like looking up stuff to actually look at it, you know.
Right. Yeah, that scene was crazy when she like walks up like completely naked.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, Isabel that is definitely one of the cooler, because that's the other thing connected. This connects from Twin Peaks: The Return. It connects with like the band stuff that I was saying, like as far as Twin Peaks: The Return having all these bands performing, and Mulholland Drive, Silencio Club, and then there's the Nick Cage Elvis sequence and Wild at Heart where he like serenades Laura Dern. And then there's Blue Velvet when she's like on the stage and singing, and that is one of the motifs of his filmography is a lot of times a woman on a stage with a microphone singing, or a 50s like a 50s era kind of vibe is like always like the tone. And it can be like kind of rock and roll a little bit, but it does kind of connect in, because the crazy thing with The Return is that The Return will have completely like unexplained stuff for sure, and then obviously the plot is just incredible, and when it's like really just going at when it's really just being very straightforward, it's unbelievable. But it's always subverting your expectation. But when you get those bands in, I feel like in The Return more than anything else he's ever done, those bands are like outside of the fiction. Is one of the reasons why I like love those bands in The Return so much, because it's like, what is that? That's not. I mean, those are like, you're just hiring like bands to perform, and now you're having like a scene off to the side of some random characters talking to each other, and then you just have like this music. You just have like this music that you just got for your series, like to use in the end credits. But it is interesting that music itself is kind of outside of fiction. And so with Lynch, it's and again, I feel like the Return is the furthest extension of this as far as like really having all these different elements, because obviously there's the unconscious and there's dreams and all this stuff in Lynch, and then there's stuff that's very conscious at times, and then that can be taken in like like melodrama, like we're saying, or like theatrical, like over the top performances and stuff. But then when he has these musical sequences, uh again, through most of his career, it kind of enhances the fiction. But it is interesting to me that it seemed like he was kind of building that motif up throughout his career, that music, or the way that you are hit by a performer doing like this song in a movie that's very surreal, like with all of his movies. It's like I think that's one of the reasons why he's so accessible. Like, first of all, yeah, it's his movies are very funny, but the way that he uses music, the way that he kind of goes, okay, here's something for you. Like, even in a movie where you're kind of losing track of where you are, if you get like a music thing going, people will kind of buy in emotionally. And I think he had that kind of vibe with music, that it's almost like he almost uses music at times, like with someone performing, as like a third wall break in a way. Like he's trying to have as many different dimensions going on as possible, is how I almost interpret it, rather than, like we were saying, does David Lynch write on a piece of paper, I am making a film about this? It's like, no, I do not think he does that. But in the course of making a film, certain scenes kind of pull the whole thing together, where you're like, oh, okay, so here's a woman on stage singing about, you're in a dream or something. Like, he'll be very direct about it in this way. And it, again, what's kind of magical about that is that music just isn't like other forms. Like, it's something different. It's very intangible. Like, it's I mean, I'm sure people can always go, oh, this is what the song's about, blah blah blah. But when it's just like a voice and like notes and all this stuff, it's just like a more abstract, it's a more abstract and somehow more accessible medium than film. um as far as like, if you're just gonna have like a saxophone playing, like, that's very abstract. I mean, that's not imitating anything, that's like its own sound.
Oh, you're talking about the scene in Lost Highway
Yeah,
with
that's
the
definitely
strobe
another
lights,
good,
and he's just
yeah, another good connection.
wailing on the fucking yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting that that's like he's like a musician in that film.
Yeah, I mean there's things that you've brought up, like well, we were talking about earlier, like actors playing different roles,
Right.
and also like other Lynch things, like like I don't want to say car chases, but like people getting in a very insane situation in a car, or I guess light bulbs burning out.
Yeah, the light bulb is a big motif for sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. I was I have been thinking a lot about Lost Highway recently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just uh um all the sex and
Yeah, Patricia
I mean,
Arquette
just
in that movie.
well, also like Mulholland Drive, like wigs, like clearly she had a wig in one of those like storylines.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that like David Lynch has like uh a very strong, obviously, filmography, but like I feel like Lost Highway, which is why I'm bringing it up, hasn't been, I guess, touched on or explored more
Yeah, I
over
love
the
it.
past
I
few
mean, I think it's
months.
definitely it's a great movie. I think it's another example of him just kind of being in control of what he wants to make, like stylistically. That's very much like Lynch, like just in form is kind of my vibe with that movie.
I mean, also like the um furthering like motifs like strobe lights, I guess.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, definitely.
I guess well, I do you have a like your top, I guess, like Lynch ranked or like top insert your number here, etc.
Well, yeah, I was kind of saying it. I mean, I kind of think Mulholland Drive is one for me. Just like I feel like that's just incredible. Then I'll put The Return at 2, and then yeah, maybe I'll do Fire Walk with Me 3, and then 4, Wild at Heart,
Damn.
and then maybe 5, Blue Velvet, and then
Oh,
6, maybe Inland Empire, and then Lost Highway. And I think all those are masterpieces. I we haven't brought up The Elephant Man, which I think
oh my gosh. Great point.
I've seen it one time. I liked it. But yeah, I think The Elephant Man, The Straight Story, and Dune are not. I wouldn't call them masterpieces necessarily, but I could see an argument for people loving them. But I think they're still like good. I mean, I think Dune got a lot of shit. I feel like it's just about the same type of experience as the Denis Villeneuve. I only saw the first one. Um, but yeah, I think there are definitely points in David Lynch's Dune that are very interesting, but it definitely does seem like he lost, like, final cut on that film, or just wasn't able to like do what he wanted to do. But it doesn't mean it's like a bad movie. I know some people like absolutely hate it. I don't think it's bad, but yeah, it does seem like kind of some of the studio Lynch was more him like taking on projects, like, and he would direct them, and again they would be good, but it wasn't the same thing as like some of these like other projects that he had made, where it was very much like an idea, because yeah, he really is like a writer first, to be honest, or like a fine artist first. So if he's just being hired to be the director of The Straight Story, yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any interviews with that. I wonder if he wanted to like change the script of The Straight Story, or if he just decided to make a movie that was straightforward and just said screw it.
Yeah. I mean, I do challenge you, Zach,
Okay.
of what you make the fact that David Lynch, granted, we were talking earlier that like people are asking like what his films are about and there's no answer.
Right.
He said the straight story was his most experimental film.
Oh yeah, you were saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, he said that. I'm like, I don't even know what to make of that. Well, I mean, in general, just like the few Lynch films that are more studio oriented.
Yeah, it's a weird comment for sure. It's definitely like a provocative comment. Did he make that like when he made the movie, or was that like years later? Do you know?
It was years later. Someone was interviewing him, and they said like, "You said the Straight Story is your most experimental film. Can you explain?" He's like, "No."
Yeah, I think it's experimental in the sense of it's like experimental to him. Like it's in the context of his filmography. It's like it's an experiment. It's uncharted territory to like to really just well, I guess it's not completely uncharted because he kind of has some of this going on in Twin Peaks as far as like the original show is concerned, like the melodramatic like small town kind of innocent people, like kind of some there are some innocent little anecdotes and stuff and scenes that are you can almost call them cute, you know, like there are cute little scenes and side plots and all this stuff. And I think that's part of it when he says like experimental. It's just it's like a new it's a new challenge for him. Because yeah, I mean I give him credit. I mean I you know especially with the return. I mean I thought he had a pretty complete career with Inland Empire, but the return really gave him an insanely complete career. Like I think that that really made it so that even though he didn't really make like a crazy amount of films, it's still like there's a very nice arc to it. So I feel like it's very nice that he did the straight story. I think it makes sense that he would make a movie that's like to him just normal, you know. I mean I personally like if you're asking me, like no, I would not call that the most experimental David Lynch by conventional, you know, by conventional standards, that's the most conventional David Lynch by far. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it did seem like he like took it as like a challenge of sorts, like just to do something new. And I don't know, maybe he I don't know how the shooting of that film was. I don't know if he felt like he was really it was difficult. Like maybe that's what he's saying when he says that it's experimental. Like it was emotionally difficult not to take the Lynchian turn when you're setting it up, you know? But yeah, I don't know. Definitely a provocative comment.
Oh, that's great.
But it does feel like the height of his powers was this almost like a bait and switch kind of like feeling. Like when he sets a movie up, he says, "This is the plot," and then he kind of just departs from that. Is when he's really like cooking, you know? Like when he's really locked in, when he's I don't know, really like kind of connecting things together, like between basically kind of like the surface of things, like the surface reality, like we're saying with like cars and stuff like that, and then yeah, like the dream world and all this stuff. And I personally do think that he had some very wild beliefs about consciousness. I think one of the reasons that his movies take so many hyper specific turns. Like again, it'll be surreal stuff, but it'll be so specific that you're almost like. And I get that's why it's frustrating for people that he doesn't answer some of these questions, just because it's not like full on Stan Brakhage. It's not like you know Jackson Pollock or something. Like he is working with characters and setting. Like he is not. I mean, this is one of the most controversial points I can make on this episode, because he is an experimental filmmaker. I would consider him experimental, but by the strict definition of experimental filmmaking, he's not an experimental filmmaker for the most part. For the most part, he's kind of like a visionary boundary pusher of conventional film, but he's one of the ultimate examples of boundary pushing conventional film that has existed. And he does really exist in this experimental realm, but yeah, I definitely do. I also do think that that is like a great thing. You know, I love juggling both things at once. Um, I think I made this argument to you when we were living together a while ago, but I have this idea on art that kind of goes something like, in film and in art, like let's say narrative art, there is context and then there's like subtext. It's something along those lines, right? There's or no, it's not context. There's the text of the film, let's say, and then there's the subtext. And if you make an experimental film, there is no text almost. So if you make a purely experimental film, or if if you're James Joyce, you write Finnegan's Wake, you are completely throwing someone into the pool where it's totally interpretation. There's no frame of reference. There's no conscious portions. It's all the unconscious. It's all something that like is existing beneath the surface that has no like words to explain it. But when you do what David Lynch does, where you have plot, that lets you have the subtext to the text. So the plot is kind of the text, and that's like the what happens in a movie, like narrative. And then the subtext is what does it's subtext is kind of like, it's more like characterization in a way. It's more like dramatic irony, it's stuff like that. It's like in Vertigo, the subtext is Kim Novak's character is and Scotty, Kim and Scotty, or whatever, or Madeline and Scotty. There's all this subtext, and the more you see the movie, the more you can read into that. In like Vertigo, for example, which I think is influential. I think Hitchcock is definitely an influence on Lynch. But when you have a strong text, you can keep watching these movies over and over again, and you can look into the eyes of the characters, and you can try and interpret the emotions of a scene. And so then when you have Mulholland Drive, where Naomi Watts is like acting in scenes, and I've always said this for years, but some of the best acting is acting within acting, because when you're making an actor be a character in a movie and then they're gonna do a scene in an audition in a movie, that is more texts on top of it, right? So then you can see layers. So when you see Naomi Watts with this old man in Mulholland Drive, there's so many layers of subtext of trying to figure out, is she having a good time? Like, does she like what's going on? Is she embracing Hollywood because she is kind of like down? Like, she is kind of down. She ends up kind of getting with the other chick later, right? So it does kind of seem, part of it is that she wants to be there, but the subtext is, this is a little bit dangerous. Is this a little bit exploitative, this scene she's in? And then you keep zooming out from there. And then if you're going to say with Mulholland Drive, hey, that whole thing was a dream, and this is the dream of another person that she's doing an audition, and there's all these layers within the thing. That's just like layers. I mean, not again. I haven't seen Inception in forever, but an easy kind of image for people is just this kind of dream within a dream idea. And I think film can simulate that feeling very well because, like I'm saying, with like subtext, you can have an actor playing an actor, and then an actor will act in a scene in which maybe they're nervous in an audition. And so maybe they're trying to perform like that, but then the scene kind of comes across like incredible acting. It's one of the greatest moments in the film is this actress giving the best performance she's ever given in an audition. So it transcends to be actually acting. It becomes like you're seeing behind the microscope. You're seeing behind the camera, you know, you're seeing something being like realized, but there's so many layers there, right? So I guess just the long-winded thing I'm trying to like get at is if you work with all these different things, you're just adding layers to be interpreted. So I really, yeah, I really think Lynch is one of the great textual filmmakers. If I can use, I don't even know if that's an actual word, but if there's like subtext in movies, I think Lynch achieved having some of the deepest subtext of any filmmaker ever because he really knew how to layer it. He knew how to do acting within acting. He knew how to have people give music performances, which like I'm saying is kind of a different medium. And when you kind of add in all these elements, there's just so much to talk about. It's so hard to just be like, "Oh yeah, the movie was just a dream." It's like, "Oh, it was just a dream the whole time." It's like I don't know if that's really like I think this is more a comment about like, you know, human emotions, you know, and human desires and like just how I guess the microscopic and the macroscopic of how those emotions play out is I mean, he's very well suited to deal with that. He's very well suited to really deal with everything together, but to contrast it together, you know. He gets to that feeling of like, wow, now the movie's over and like, oh, I guess I'm awake now. I'm uh I'm back to reality, like walk out of a Lynch film and you're like, oh, okay. I guess I'm back to like no text. I don't know. I don't know if that even like makes sense, but you kind of like get done with a Lynch and you're just like, wow, I guess yeah, I'm just gonna chill. I'm just gonna sit here and not have anything going on. Because I don't know if
No, that's
I
great.
don't really know if he's like
That's
if he's
great.
interested in like the mundane, you know? Like I guess my point. Like it's like Hitchcockian for sure that he's interested in getting you hooked just so that he can be like, you know, there's more levels to consciousness that so I guess that might be my thesis of like our conversation. I don't know if that would be the right word, but or maybe my general kind of conclusion is just yeah, I think for a long time I had thought, okay, Lynch's films are about, you know, the consciousness and unconsciousness, but I feel like that's not really enough layers. I think he genuinely was trying to go for as many layers as possible. And that's a very like abstract way to talk about this, but yeah, like I was saying with music cuz again, I don't know if you agree with that, but I definitely think some of like like people singing in his movies or like the bands in the return and all this kind of stuff. That really just doesn't feel like conscious or unconscious. Because sometimes you look at that and you can be like, "Oh, that's a dream. Oh, it's just a dream sequence of like a musical performance." But I don't know. Sometimes he features that kind of thing in his films, and I'm just like, it's not exactly conscious either, because it's not conscious as in it's not in the fiction of the film. Like a person playing the guitar in a movie, if they're just playing themselves and they're just playing a guitar in a movie, they're not really a character. You know, they're like a different entity. It does feel like that's the other thing I would say is I feel like he did have very specific answers to some of the questions that people wanted to ask him. I think some of the stuff that he does, like the beginning of Eraserhead, it's like this creature like pulling like the lever, and then the Eraserhead guy gets like shot through space.
Right.
That kind of comes up in The Return, and
Oh.
it's not the same exact thing, but it's like eerily similar. It's like black and white, and it's like Cooper, and like he's like in another dimension, and he has to like travel through this other dimension just to get back to Earth. And it's kind of like the Red Room in Twin Peaks. I think David Lynch genuinely thought that there were extra dimensional beings behind reality. I think he believed that literally. If you put a gun to my head, what do I actually think he believes? Yeah, I think he believes there are 7-dimensional beings pulling levers behind the strings of reality. And I do wonder. I wonder how much he was able to like even communicate that. Because yeah, I think he kind of did what he wanted to do, but I am very curious if there was just batshit insane stuff that he never made. You know, whether it be films or, I mean, I haven't really listened to his music, but it really seems like with Twin Peaks and then Eraserhead, it really seems like he's trying to say that no, I literally believe that if you pull back the curtain on consciousness and you ask somebody, and we ask ourselves, who was the creator of consciousness? I don't think he believes in like a Christian God, you know? I think David Lynch believes there are 7-dimensional, 8-dimensional beings that guide human reality. Oh my god, my sink just like made a crazy noise. It scared the fucking shit out of me. Holy shit. What the fuck?
Appropriate.
Oh my god, it just stopped making the noise the second I walked over. I was like, that would be crazy. Wait a second.
Let the fear throw flee.
Jesus Christ. Is that David Lynch coming back from the dead? What the fuck?
Let it wash over you. Don't be afraid.
I heard you doing an impression of me talking about the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Zach. He like materializes in my fucking apartment. I did write a little review of like The Return, and he does hint at some shit in The Return. Like he does in Twin Peaks. He kind of does kind of hint at like not necessarily like extraterrestrial. Again, a lot of it is supernatural in the world of Twin Peaks. It's you kind of take it as supernatural. But he really seems to be packaging it in this context of like, which is almost where I would get with his career, where I'm like, damn, there almost is a totally other movie he could have made in my mind, where like Dune is like a science fiction film, but I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a tragedy that I mean, again, I don't know if he would have wanted to make this kind of movie, but I mean, I could see him making a movie with like gray aliens and flying saucers. You know, like just a full on, like imagine Blue Velvet and then it's like a flying saucer lands, or like a movie about Roswell.
Gosh.
And it's like a David Lynch movie. Like I don't know. That's almost where my mind goes going through his entire career. I'm like, what's the only thing he hasn't done? And yeah, I think that would be the ultimate. That would be the only like image in David Lynch's career that I almost was, if you know, going through his entire career of like, damn, he never did like one thing that you could almost believe him doing. And obviously, it's all like his like language. He like I think he basically achieved what he wanted to achieve in film, but I don't know. It really. I mean, the fact that episode 8 of The Return features the nuke going off, and then at one point in the show they do kind of say that like the FBI characters, like the Dale Cooper FBI characters, there's this project in it called like it's like the Blue Rose Project. They're and it's like basically the FBI investigating UFOs. That's like one of the plot lines in. I forget how much of this they go into in the original show, but they bring it up in The Return, and they kind of like say that that's like why like Cooper like went missing was he was like he was on a secret project searching for UFOs. So it's really fucking crazy to me that he shows the nuke, and this is so stupid. I haven't even brought this up until this moment, but in Eraserhead, there is a photo of a nuke going off in his apartment on the wall. Do you remember that?
Oh my god. Um. No.
It's like literally there's a fucking photo of a nuke on his wall, and it's like the whole movie is like we're saying like very 50s and stuff, and there's this whole thing in like UFO lore, or in people when people talk about like aliens and shit, everyone says like they started showing up when the nuke went off, as far as like in like American society. I mean, again, I'm not a complete expert on this topic, but that is like a narrative, and it's so interesting to me that episode 8 of The Return, which is one of the craziest things David Lynch has ever done in his entire career. In episode 8, it's all in New Mexico, and there's all these, there's weird like beings and stuff, and weird like zombie like people, and all this kind of crazy shit. And again, it's not gray aliens, but I almost feel like that's like the direct metaphor. I almost think that he, with Twin Peaks, is kind of being like, at his most specific, at his most like, this is what the case is, and this person went missing, and they reappeared as another person's body, and all this like crazy shit, like a bunch of supernatural shit happening. It's like what happens when the bureaucracy of detectives and FBI agents are confronted with the supernatural and like the ethereal. And it's a really interesting thing. It's really interesting to me that he synthesized a lot of these feelings down like in the types of films that he made, because yeah, I think there is some, I like, on one end of the spectrum, yeah, I don't think that David Lynch has a fucking sentence to explain his movies. But on another end of the spectrum, like, yeah, I think there is some real meat on the bones to some of the imagery and some of the, like there's a clip of that's been going around of someone asking David Lynch if he believes in angels. And he was like, I think he said like, yeah, you know. So there's some literal shit as well. I think that's important to add into our conversation. And if most of David Lynch is very figurative or abstract, like there's so many things that are very abstract, I do think there are a lot of big chunks of his filmography where he, like, word for word would be like, yeah, I believe that there is a giant man behind reality pulling levers, and I think that destiny is preordained by beings that are outside of our control, by beings that are in other dimension. And again, I mean, you can call that aliens or something, but I mean, yeah, I think the Return most specifically hinted at this, where it was like, I think he believed that. I really think that David Lynch had a visceral experience with meditation and all this stuff, right? And through making his films, and his perception of the supernatural and the unconscious was that this is all kind of in the same like stew of, you know, this dream that we're having until we wake up, where it's like you're in a movie and you're dreaming, and then you walk out of the theater, you wake up. And you know, that's one of my favorite clips of David Lynch is when he said, you know, life is a dream, but one day you wake up. Yeah, it's just an amazing line because he, you know, I don't, again, I think he was, I don't know if frustrated is the right word. I think he found pleasure in the unknown, but I think he had very strong impulses to tell people, like, this is a dream, you're gonna wake up. This is a dream, you're gonna wake up. Like, that's, I don't know if I'm gonna say that's the thesis of his entire work, but it's something along those lines. It's something along the lines of unconsciousness or dream reality is more real. But maybe that isn't even the furthest extent of consciousness. Maybe that's just the highest level of consciousness we have. And like, you know, it's you're hyper conscious, you're on another plane of consciousness when you are confronting these seven-dimensional beings like in like dark clock towers that are controlling the world from other planets and all this shit. Like, yeah, so R.I.P. Lynch. Hopefully he is talking to God right now. Hopefully he is talking to the ancient Sumerian god that was written about in the ages of Babylonia.
Oh wow.
But yeah, we won't know. But it did seem like he was coming up through my fall. That would be the ultimate end of this podcast, is just if David Lynch materialized out of my sink. If my sink was making all this weird ass noise and then his body just materialized in front of me and he's just like, oh my god, that would have been great. But unfortunately, you know, unfortunately not. R.I.P.
Amen.
Well, anyway, God bless. We can wrap it up.
Sure.
Well, we'll be back another episode of maybe we'll do something else soon. All right, bye-bye.